Did you know that in Pokemon X and Y, an NPC mentions that Pokemon eggs are actually cradles holding fully formed Pokemon? So when the egg hatches, the Pokemon isn't being born, it is just stepping out of its container. And the champion Cynthia also mentions this, where in the special Arceus event at the Sinjoh ruins in Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver, we actually see an egg that descends, and it just pops out of nowhere with light, and inside of it was a level 1 legendary. Cynthia says that life that comes from an egg will eventually come to an end, which is what Arceus wanted to show us, which is kind of ominous for Cynthia to say. So it's still a mystery to this day what exactly Pokemon eggs are. The NPCs don't know much. In Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, there's a roughneck trainer. Based on his appearances, we may think that he would have just a rough Pokemon, but his name is actually Kirby, from Nintendo's Kirby. He actually sends out a pink round Cleffa, which looks just like Kirby. So this definitely was intentional. But while the name Kirby using a Cleffa started as a very nice pop culture reference, the game actually gives him a surprisingly sad lore reason for this team. When you speak to him, Kirby actually reveals that he is hanging out in the Graveyard Tower because Team Galactic killed all of his other Pokemon. So this little Cleffa is the only partner he has left in the world. I mean, there's another name reference in Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green. There's an NPC bird keeper that is named Donald. But he actually sends out a Farfetch'd, so this is definitely a reference to Donald Duck, which is from Disney. Another meme reference that we may have missed, he is Psychic Robert. He is on Route 10, and after you defeat his level 22 Solosis, he actually delivers Dragon Ball Z line, where he says, "You and your Pokemon's power levels are incredible, and they are over 9,000 for sure." He's trying to be like this Dragon Ball Z character. There's a rare phenomenon in Pokemon Emerald. If you take the cable car up to Mount Chimney or back down, there's a 1 in 64 chance of a hiker or a camper appearing. Zigzagoon and Poochyena were also programmed to appear, but due to a programming error, they never show up. Another hiker that is interesting is he hands your character an item called a float stone, which cuts a Pokemon's weight in half, but the moment you leave the room and walk back in, the thin hiker sprite has suddenly transformed into an incredibly massive heavy hiker sprite because he gave away his magical floating item. But technically this float stone was supposed to work on Pokemon, so the hiker is a person. It would be interesting if you get rid of the float stone, like you just release it, and then the Pokemon trainer, the original one that we are playing as, like May or Brendan, they would gain weight if you just throw the item float stone away. There's some specific foreshadow for the future games. A nameless girl NPC. She mentions wanting a Pokemon that is pink with a beautiful floral pattern, which is just like Muna. But this was likely a coincidence because Pokemon Gold and Silver were actually meant to be the last Pokemon games, so instead of the Pokemon just being planned in advance, they likely just look back at the old game dialogue for inspiration. On the other hand, this foreshadow is confirmed to be real, where a scientist, he says that his machine will allow trainers to visualize the dreams of their Pokemon. But this exact concept also came into Generation 5 with the Pokemon Dream World feature, where we were able to just see the dreams of our own Pokemon. So one of the classic Pokemon NPC Easter eggs comes with youngsters. We obviously remember youngster Joey, which always has Rattatas, and he always calls you to brag about Rattatas. But there's even another NPC. He says, "I like shorts. They're comfy and easy to wear." But this youngster also returns on Route 5 in Pokemon X and Y. Interesting thing is that in Pokemon Black and White 2, there's a girl at the corner of a bridge that says, "This dress is comfy and easy to wear," which who knows? Some people are speculating that it could be his sister. There are more famous NPCs that we may remember if you played any of these Pokemon games. So the first one will be Diamond and Pearl, Mindy. Does that name ring a bell? If you don't know who she is, she's this girl where she wanted to trade one of your Pokemon with a Haunter, but this Haunter is actually holding an Everstone, which means that it won't be able to evolve ever. If it wasn't holding an Everstone, then it would have evolved into an Ice Gengar, but it doesn't, which is why it's basically like a fan-base villain. We remember in Pokemon Sword and Shield there used to be max raid battles, and most NPCs there are pretty average. But there is one NPC that is by the name Martin. Many users have agreed that this AI partner is practically useless because it constantly spams cosmic power instead of dealing actual damage with Martin's Soul Rock. Now we're going to get a little bit more spooky in here. In Sword and Shield there's a specific mission where a young girl by the name of Paula, she stands near a Pokeball statue in Hammerlock City. She asks you to deliver a letter to her old friend Frank in Balloonlea town. But when you find Frank, he is a very old grandfather and he reveals that Paula was a childhood friend who fell terribly ill decades ago. But if you return to the statue where Paula was, she's completely gone. Like, she's vanished. Oh yeah, and also you could find a Reaper Cloth, which is an item used to evolve ghost Pokemon on the ground where she stood. Yeah, we could all like speculate that that was probably a ghost. I mean, there's many instances of ghost girls as well, like in Pokemon Platinum, in the old chateau, there was a very creepy small girl that would just come up and disappear randomly. Now moving on to Pokemon Ultra Sun and Moon, there's police officers at the Koni City police station, and they send you on a bizarre investigation where you discover that lots of humans, including a chef, and even the police chief, have quietly been replaced by hidden Dittos that are pretending to be human. I don't think it was foreshadowing, but if it was, then that would be very cool if it was a foreshadow to Pokemon Pokapia, where the Ditto would turn into a human. But this time in Pokemon Ultra Sun and Moon, they're trying to investigate all these humans that have come from Ditto. If you played Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green, you may remember that there's this old man NPC that teaches you how to catch a Weedle. Well, this NPC old man was also in the original Gen 1 games. Talking to him and then immediately flying to Cinnabar's island completely scrambles the wild encounter data. This lets the players fish along the coast to spawn the iconic game-breaking glitch known as Missing No. There's a special NPC who appears inside the Mauville City Pokemon Center. He only spawns if the last digit of your player's trainer ID is 0 or 1. So if your player's trainer ID was something else, this would never appear, so it's pretty rare. What he does is that he sings a custom song for you, and you could change specific words or phrases in a song using the easy chat system. Although NPCs are amazing to talk to, there is one that shouldn't be interacted with, and that is in Pokemon Legends ZA. It is a girl who says she can memorize names, and if you do tell her to memorize names, the whole credits is going to play again for 6 minutes. Something pretty cute is actually related to a Pokemon rather than an NPC, but I think it still does count because Misty is still like a character overall. But if you go to Misty's gym in Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver, and if you lead your party with a Togepi, the game shows a special message. Togepi suddenly began crying softly, which is a sweet nod to Misty's famous Togepi from the anime. She always had this special Togepi. But going back to more pretty sad stuff is in Anastar City. Now actually if you listen to the theme closely with Anastar City, it sounds a little bit like unique. It sounds kind of sorrow, but at the same time it sounds mystical. So in one of the houses, if you go inside, there's a lonely old man, and he tells you that his wife passed away. He has no friends left, and he is incredibly lonely. But he asks to borrow any low-level Pokemon, which is like level 5 or under, to keep him company. And if you give him a Pokemon and return after beating the Elite Four, the old man is gone. And on the floor, you will find the Pokeball containing your Pokemon, the same exact one that you would give him, and a comment shard which is left as an inheritance, and a final notebook entry. The letter reveals that having your Pokemon there allowed him to smile and be happy on his final days. So rest in peace, old man. So in the Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, the rival character Blue starts his team with a level 66 Tauros. We may think that this is just regular, right? But this was actually an intentional nod to Professor Oak's unused high-level champion battle team, which was hidden in the code of the original Gen 1 games. Imagine how cool that would be if we actually got to battle Professor Oak, like right in the first Pokemon games. But they never decided to put this in, so they just decided to put the level 66 Tauros all the way in Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, with Blue having it. Ace trainers Felix and Diana on Sinnoh's Route 229 have teams that are directly modeled after the movie characters Butler and Diane, which is from the Pokemon movie Jirachi Wishmaker. These Ace trainers have exact same teams, which is very cool. Now these were all like some of the best Pokemon NPC Easter eggs that are very memorable. If there's any more Easter eggs that I may have missed, comment down below. Peace.